Imagine the last Monday morning you ever have to set an alarm. Not a vacation, not a long weekend, the actual last one forever. Most people place that morning somewhere in their mid-60s if it comes at all. But there's a group of people, ordinary people with ordinary salaries, who moved that morning a full decade earlier. And they didn't win the lottery. They didn't start a company. They just understood something about money that most of us were never taught. Here's what's strange. The math behind retiring 10 years early isn't complicated, but almost nobody does it. The average American saves less than 5% of their income. The median retirement account holds just $35,000. And yet, the gap between retiring at 65 and retiring at 55 comes down to a handful of decisions, most of which you can make this year. This isn't theory, it's arithmetic. Let's start with a number that will reframe everything you think you know about retirement. At a 10% savings rate, which feels responsible, maybe even generous, you need approximately 40 years of work to retire. If you started at 25, that's 65, right on schedule, nothing left over. Savings rate isn't just a number on a paycheck. It's a lever, and when you pull it, two things happen at once. You accumulate wealth faster, and you prove to yourself that you need less to live on, which means the finish line gets closer from both directions. At a 25% savings rate, you can retire in roughly 32 years. Push to 40%, and that drops to 22 years. That's not a small difference. That's an entire decade of Monday mornings. Before we go further, let's talk about what retirement actually costs, because most people get this wrong. The standard framework is called the 4% rule. Here's what it means in plain English. If you withdraw 4% of your portfolio each year, history suggests your money will last 30 years. So if you spend $50,000 a year, you need a portfolio of $1.25 million. That's the math most retirement calculators use. But there's a catch, and for early retirees, it's a big one. The 4% rule was designed for a 30-year retirement. If you retire at 55 instead of 65, your money needs to last 50 years, not 30. Research suggests that for a 50-year retirement, the safe withdrawal rate drops to around 3.25%. That sounds like a small change. It isn't. At 3.25%, you need roughly 31 times your annual expenses saved, not 25 times. That's 23% more money, more runway, more time. The finish line just moved. So where do you actually find the savings to close that gap? The answer is sitting in your budget. And the biggest opportunity is also the most obvious. Housing. The average American household spends over $24,000 a year on housing, about a third of all spending. For many people, housing feels like a fixed wall, but for others, it's a choice, relocating to a lower cost of living city, downsizing, renting out a portion of your home to offset the mortgage. Each of these moves doesn't just save money today, it shrinks the portfolio you need to retire. Here's why that math is so powerful. Every $1,000 you cut from your annual expenses reduces the retirement portfolio you need by $25,000. Cut $10,000 a year from your budget, and you need $250,000 less saved. That's not just a smaller number on a spreadsheet. That's years off your working life, sometimes more than a decade, depending on where you start. Expense reduction is one of the fastest retirement accelerators that exists, and it doesn't require a raise. Transportation is the second largest expense most households carry, around $12,000 a year on average. And yet, it's treated as non-negotiable. The average new vehicle transaction price hit around $48,000 in late 2024. That's nearly a decade of retirement runway sitting in a driveway. One car instead of two, a used car instead of a new one, a vehicle that gets you there instead of one that signals something. These aren't sacrifices to mourn. They're trades, your time at a desk exchanged for years on your own terms. But cutting expenses alone isn't the whole story. Because there's a second lever, one that doesn't require you to give anything up. It just requires your money to work harder. That lever is investment return. Return on investment sounds abstract. Here's what it means in your life. The difference between earning 5% annually on your investments versus 7% doesn't just change a number on a spreadsheet. It changes when you get to stop working. Over a long investing career, that 2 percentage point gap can shave 4 to 5 years off your timeline without saving a single extra dollar. The math on compounding is patient and relentless. Start early and it works with you. Start late and you're fighting it. JP Morgan's long-term capital market assumptions project US large-cap stocks to return around 7 to 8% annually over the next decade, bonds around 4.7 to 5%. That gap matters enormously when you're building a portfolio designed to last 50 years. A 60-40 portfolio, 60% stocks and 40% bonds, gives you the growth of equities with the cushion of fixed income. That balance isn't just a preference, it's a retirement date question. Morningstar's 2025 research confirms that a 60-40 retiree can safely withdraw 4% annually over 30 years. An all-bond retiree? Only 2.8%. How you invest your money determines how long it lasts, and how early you can stop adding to it. Now let's talk about the thing nobody wants to talk about: healthcare. For most people under 65, health insurance is tied to an employer. Leave that job a decade early, and suddenly you're buying coverage on the open market. A 50-year-old can pay $700 to $900 a month in unsubsidized premiums on the ACA marketplace. That's $8,000 to $10,000 a year. Money that has to come from somewhere, and money that most early retirement plans underestimate. But here's where early retirement gets interesting. If you manage your taxable income carefully, drawing from Roth accounts, keeping withdrawals below certain thresholds, you can qualify for substantial ACA subsidies that dramatically reduce that cost. Early retirement isn't just about stopping work. It's about designing your income so the tax code works in your favor. And speaking of income design, how do you actually access your retirement money before the traditional age? Most people don't know that the IRS has two built-in pathways. The Rule of 55 allows penalty-free withdrawals from a 401k if you leave your job at 55 or older. IRS Rule 72 allows substantially equal periodic payments from an IRA before age 59 and a half, without triggering a 10% early withdrawal penalty. These aren't loopholes. They're features of the tax code that most people simply never hear about. There's one more cost that doesn't show up in any budget spreadsheet: Social Security. Retiring 10 years early means 10 fewer high-earning years on your record, and that can reduce your eventual benefit by 20 to 30%. Claiming Social Security at 62 instead of 67 permanently reduces your monthly benefit by about 30%. For many early retirees, Social Security still provides meaningful income, but it arrives smaller and later than it would have otherwise, a trade-off worth pricing in before you decide. So, let's bring this together. You've got three levers: savings rate, expenses, and investment returns. Pull any one of them meaningfully, and your retirement date moves. Pull two or three of them, and a decade of Mondays disappears. A person saving 5% of their income needs 66 years of work to retire. A 50% savings rate? 17 years. That's not a typo. The same income, completely different lives. Now consider a single $500 monthly expense: a car payment, a subscription bundle, a habit you've stopped noticing. Eliminate it. Invest those dollars at 7% annually. Over 20 years, that one decision compounds into roughly $240,000. One expense, one choice. The size of a down payment on your freedom. Compounding, the process where your returns earn returns of their own, doesn't care how it got started. It just needs a beginning. Some people hear early retirement and imagine deprivation, but the data tells a different story. People who retire 10 years early didn't suffer through their 30s to get there. They just made different choices. Smaller houses, older cars, fewer subscriptions. Choices that felt like trade offs at the time and felt like freedom 10 years later. That's the reframe, not what you gave up, what you got instead. That last Monday morning alarm, the one you imagined at the beginning, it doesn't require a windfall. It doesn't require perfection. It requires understanding that the gap between 55 and 65 isn't time, it's math. And math, unlike luck, responds to decisions. The insight at the center of all of this is simple enough to say in one sentence: retiring early isn't about earning more. It's about understanding that every dollar you don't spend is worth $25 you don't have to save. That's the lever most people never touch. Somewhere right now, someone is looking at a number, a savings rate, a monthly expense, a portfolio balance, and deciding it's too small to matter. It isn't. The decade you think you can't reclaim is sitting right there in the math, waiting for you to do something different with a Monday morning.